talking about here tonight is the ARRL Foundation. And my name is Mike Ritz, W7VO, if you guys don't know me. I am the ARRL Director for the Northwestern Division and have been for 3 years and just got reelected for another 3 years. And also in 2019, when I first got on the board, they were looking around and said, and they nominated me as director and elected me as a director for the ARRL Foundation. And so tonight we're going to find out what the foundation is. We're going to find out just exactly what is the ARRL Foundation. You know, what do we do? We're going to discuss the ARRL Foundation grant program, and then we're going to talk in pretty much in detail about the ARRL scholarship program. It's the side of the house that I'm very heavily involved in, and it's I think by far the most time-consuming activity that the foundation has, and we're going to be talking a lot about that. So if you've got any kids or grandkids that are college age and are maybe looking to get some scholarship money and are licensed, you know, they might want to pay pretty close attention. And then we'll have a little Q&A session at the end if you guys have any questions. So what is the ARRL Foundation? Well, it was founded in 1973 as a separate 503c nonprofit corporation, and that's separate from the ARRL. Even though it's got the word ARRL in the name, it's not really owned by or controlled by or in any way, except through a dotted line associated with the ARRL. It's a separate company. And in 1973, you know, its original intent was trying to generate some activities with AMSAT, and it's since migrated into being a grant and scholarship arm. As I mentioned, it's not directly a part of an ARRL. It consists of a 9-member voting board of directors comprised of 5 members that are ARRL directors, and 4 members that are elected but not currently associated with ARRL. And most of the ones we have are either former directors. We're very fortunate to have 2 not only former directors but former vice presidents of the league that are now honorary vice presidents that are serving on the ARRL Foundation. So it's pretty heavily. We've also got a treasurer and a secretary. And we take a look at the current member list. We've got Dr. David Woolweaver, K5RAV, who is our president and the head of the foundation. Dr. Rika Niswander, K7GM, is our treasurer, who right now is the same treasurer as the ARRL. He's been doing both activities. Brian Milchowski, N5Z GT. Boy, that's a bad one. That's a bad phone one. Anyway, he's a vice president of the foundation and is also chair of the grant program. He's a former ARRL director. And under him on the grant side is Dick Norton, N6AA. I'm sure many of you people may know him, and he's a director for the Southwestern Division. And then we have Jim Fenstermaker, K9JF, up here from the Northwestern Division out of Washington. He's the chair of the scholarship committee, and he's also a former vice president of the ARRL and a current honorary vice president. And then under him are the rest of the scholarship people. Rhea Jaira, I'm sure many of you have know her, N2RJ, the director of the Hudson Division. Tom Abernethy, W3TOM, a director of the Atlantic Division. Tim Duffy, I'm sure you guys know him, one of the key people at DX Engineering. He's also on our ARRL Foundation board of directors. David Norris, K5UZ, who's the director of the Delta Division, and myself, W7VO, the director of the Northwestern Division. And by the way, we are all volunteers. None of us at this point are getting paid for our time serving the foundation. So it helps keep the administration costs down pretty substantially. None of us takes any money, or nothing we do really gets reimbursed at all. The ARRL Foundation mission statement was a brand new mission statement we adopted in 2020. And it states, the foundation exists to advance the art, science, and societal benefits of amateur radio service by awarding financial grants and scholarships to individuals and organizations in support of their charitable, educational, and scientific efforts. So we are really the philanthropic arm of the ARRL. Where does the money come from that we operate with? Well, the ARRL is funded by donations and grants from a combination of ARRL members, their families. A lot of times it's in the form of bequests and other organizations that support the ARRL Foundation. Our current assets are about $7 million. It's mostly in endowments, in restricted funds that we don't really have access to, but currently it's say about 7 million. And where's the money go? Well, a large portion of it education or for educational scholarships for students in higher learning, and that was about 550,000 in 2021. Just as an aside, we are expecting that number to be substantially higher this year for the 2022-2023 school year, and there'll be more following on that later. Monetary grants to ham radio organizations. We're about 12,000 or so last year in 2021. So you can see a substantial amount of the money that the foundation deals with goes to educational scholarships. And there are some administrative costs. The ARRL charges us about $15,000 a year to handle all the stuff that goes on at headquarters, all the paperwork they have to do and whatnot. And there's also, of course, a fee for our IRS auditing. We bring in an outside auditor to audit the foundation, and it costs us about $13,000. So the overhead on the ARRL Foundation is very, very low as a percentage of the total dollar value and the dollar amount that goes out each year. On the ARRL Foundation administration side, one question we always get asked is, why are there administrative fees collected for scholarships? When all the ARRL Foundation members donate their time, well, all the foundation board members donate their time. However, everything at the ARRL is handled through the development department, which includes a full-time manager and 2 assistants. You got a payroll of 3, plus the people in accounting that have to deal with the audits and whatnot. And these expenses are billed to the foundation directly by the ARRL. So, I mean, there are some costs involved, but it's just basically the bookkeeping stuff and notifying working with the schools to make sure that the kids get the proper money, and they do a very good job for us at headquarters and in supporting the foundation. Let's talk a little bit about the ARRL Foundation grant program. Grants are generally requested by amateur radio organizations. It might be a club, it might be a school, it might be an individual that's got a special project you'd like to get funded to get some money to fund. And they're for projects related to amateur radio operations, classes, school stations, or other projects. I think last year we donated a couple $1,000s to a school to help them set up an amateur radio station in there. That's been most of the ones that I've seen. And of course, other special projects. Those could be satellite launches. We donated money last year to aid in a new amateur radio satellite program. So, I mean, it just kind of hits the gambit. However, but while you're thinking, if you're an Aries person, oh, by the way, the windows for these, we just changed this last year. You used to be able to apply anytime, and now there are specific windows you can check out on the ARRL website that I believe open up every 3 months. David, am I correct on that? If he's still on here?
Yeah, it's actually it's 4 times a year. I mean,
4 times a year, which is every 3 months.
Three times a year. 3 times a year.
Oh, 3 times a year. So it's not every 3 months, but it's 3 times a year then. Okay.
Correct.
I should have looked that up, but I didn't have time to do that. But thank you for the clarification. Anyway, it's on the ARRL Foundation portion of the ARRL website. And by the way, the foundation grant cannot be for an Aries or MCOM related. And the question is, you might ask, is why is that stipulation put in there? And I think you can pretty much figure out with as many thousands of Aries organizations as there are in the U.S. We would have every one of those coming to the foundation to get some money to buy them new radios and whatnot. So we would just be completely overwhelmed with that. I'm pretty sure that's the reason why they put that in there. David mentioned to me earlier, is the program is currently underutilized. You notice we gave out $550,000 in scholarships last year and only about $12,000 in grants. And why? Because that's all the people that apply. So if you have a program or know of a program that is worthy of an ARRL Foundation grant, please get a hold of us, and we can run it through and maybe get them some of the funding that they need to get their project off the ground. The grant process, here's how the grant process works. The proposed project is submitted along with a narrative by the requester to justify the product and the funding needs. Here's who we are, here's what we do, and here's what we're working on, and here's why we think we deserve the money and what we need it for. So I mean, basically it's the It's the who, why, when, and where of what the project is. Generally, if it involves an outside organization, we've got to get support from them and indicate, so this is something that's being done for an organization. We need to make sure that what you guys are doing are going to be accepted by the organization. The grant committee reviews and either approves, modifies, or denies the grant. The only ones I've seen denied, I think, since I've been on here, have been ones related to ARRS programs. And we want to buy all new, Bofang HTs for all of our ARRS members. Well, that's not what the foundation grant program does. A recommendation is forwarded then. And so once the grant side of it has approved it, it goes to the entire foundation board of directors for their approval. If the board is satisfied with the recommendation, we go ahead and approve it, and then it goes to it goes back to headquarters, and they issue the check and get it sent out. So, and this by the way is the easier side of the ARRL Foundation program. The scholarship side, as you might imagine, is entirely different and entirely much more complicated because, and I'll tell you guys how complicated it is here in a little while. So let's talk now a little bit about ARRL Foundation scholarship. And I mentioned, if you've got any kids that are approaching the age of where they're going to be, maybe they're a high school junior and start thinking about it, or even better, a high school senior, or maybe in the first couple of years of a university and they're a licensed ham, please pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you guys. For the 2021-22 scholarship season, there were about 130 different scholarships available for students to request, and about, I think it was 177 total candidates. So the opportunity was there for a lot of kids to get scholarships. Now that didn't quite work out that way because not all the scholarships had people apply for them, and not all the candidates applied for the scholarships that were appropriate, or you had to have both things match up in order for a scholarship to be awarded. You had to have kids that had applied for the right scholarships and also were qualified for the scholarships. There was, as I mentioned, about $550,000 worth of scholarships were awarded, and the amounts varied from $500 all the way up to what was a record this year, $25,000. I think there were about 8 of those. And the previous years, the maximum has been $5,000, but we were very lucky to get a grant from the ARDC, Amateur Radio Digital Communications, that funded a large portion of our ARRL Foundation scholarships this year. And I believe that's going to continue in some fashion next year as well. So, I mean, it was a record amount, I think, by double, and the scholarship amounts went from 5,000. We said we gave away quite a few that were both at 10 and 15, and I believe, and also $25,000. Not just believe, I know we did. In late summer, there's always an announcement that goes into QST calling for applications to get kids and get them to submit their, go on the website and not download, but upload their information. This information, of course, is always updated all the time on the ARRL website, so keep an eye out for that. And this is one of the most important things I'm going to tell you guys that might be looking at scholarships. The next application window starts on November 1st and ends December 31st. And kids have a full 60 days to get their transcripts together, get their applications in, and get rolling. We asked Melissa Stemmer, who is our secretary for the foundation. She's the head of development at ARRL. When do most of the kids submit their applications for scholarships? And the answer this last year, and I'm sure it is every year, is quote unquote at the last minute, right? Most of them wind up turning them in on the last day or the last couple of days before they're due, right? So, I mean, so we used to have this open from September until December 31st. It's like, why keep it open that long? Let's at least give them a little bit of a tightening of the screws and get them a little bit more time to get things rolled in. But anyway, so if you're interested in the scholarship, know somebody it is, the magic day for this year will be November 1st. And we're also, by the way, working on a new database entry system, and this may not really get incorporated until the 2023-2024, but we're going to try to get it up and running this year. Right now, we handle all the scholarship stuff is all done using Excel spreadsheets. And I'm going to tell you how unwieldy that is in a little bit, but we're actually negotiating right now with a a database program company that's cloud-based that is basically, so all they do is work with scholarship foundations and the vetting of scholarship applicants. And so I know David Woolweaver, Dr. Woolweaver has been very busy working with that vendor to try to get them to handle all the things that we need to make the program work. And they're getting very close now to starting running some testing on this program. Hopefully we'll have it all ready to go by November 1st. If they don't, we'll go back to the way that we have done it before, which is via giant Excel spreadsheets. And we'll talk about how big that spreadsheet is in a couple of minutes. Let's talk a little bit about the scholarship process itself, right? What we do with scholarships. I can tell you, number one, it's very labor intensive. About 2 months of my year, every year, I can do almost nothing but work on scholarships. And this last year, because of the large dollar amount, we had added Zoom video interviews with candidates for the larger dollar scholarships, and that added a tremendous amount of time to what we did. It was, you just imagine a spreadsheet. This is what we start with. That's 180 rows deep by about 200 columns wide, right? And in those 200 columns are all the different scholarships, are all the answers to all the questions that the students have to come up with, their financial information, their name, address, phone numbers, their how much radioactivities they've got, where they're going to school, all their their grade point average stuff. Just a huge giant spreadsheet. And we have to do data sorts in order to get these winnowed down per the terms of references in order to narrow it down to a group of students that actually qualify for the scholarship. And then finally, out of that, we actually do some extra research. For example, look them up on QRZ. If one of the requirements is that they be an active ham, what better place to look is look them up on QRZ and see how many hits they have on there. Or some of them have to have a letter of reference from a ham radio club to prove they're actually active member of that club. And without that, we can't really do our job. For the entire committee, which is, by the way, all volunteer plus headquarters staff, it is estimated about 500 hours, and I think it was more than 500 hours. I think I put 100 hours in myself. Has to be done each year, vetting candidates and working with schools to distribute the funds. The funds, by the way, do not go to the student. The funds go directly to the university or college that they will be attending. And of course, we can't do anything till they tell us where they're going. At the time that they apply, they may not have all of their, which school they've been accepted to yet, but we do not distribute the funds until they are signed up and actually registered at a university or college. The question: how do they vetted? So what do we actually look for when we're looking at the kids that are for these scholarships? Well, everything is done for what are called terms of references, or TORs. And our TOR is a document which is kind of a direction, or it's a direction from the people that are setting up the scholarships, describing a donor's wishes when a scholarship is created. He specifies the award criteria. In other words, we don't tell them what they should do. They tell us what they want. The amount of the scholarship, the frequency of the award. For example, do you want to have it given out once every 3 years, or only when they have enough money in there, or only when they donate the money? The award amount, whether it be $500, or say we've had them up to $25,000, and the type, which is either permanently or temporarily restricted funds. And we'll talk a little bit about what those are. So the donors, or the families of the donors in some cases, are the ones that tell us, and of course our development department works with them to set this up. I can tell you right now, from having done this for a few years, the tighter the terms of reference, the easier my job is to vet candidates, because I can do data sorts and weed out all the ones that don't meet it. If it's set for a certain location, I can weed everybody else out. And if you get down to maybe 10 or 12 people that qualify for an award, and you've got to vet those, that's not as bad as some of these TORs are so unrestrictive. Must be a living, breathing ham, right? And you've got 177 candidates. Well, you've got to vet all 177 candidates and do research on them, and that can take days of research to do, to find the one that, and then you kind of almost have to kind of make up your own. Well, I'm an active ham. I'd like to see people that are active hams get the award, or or whatnot, so that we wind up getting a little bit of latitude as to the kinds of kids that we would like to see them when the tour is wide open. They can also stipulate some specific criteria, and some of the common ones are, and this is a requirement for any of the scholarships really, must be a licensed amateur, right? If you have a kid that does not have an active ham license, and not a ham license that was licensed and expired, it's got to be active on the day that they put the application in. And that, by the way, it's a requirement for any of the ARRL handled scholarships. There can be, most of them have license class restrictions, and most of those must be a general class or higher, right? That shows a devotion to the hobby. If they just go get, one of the things we don't want to see when we're vetting for scholarships is somebody that got their technician class license a week before they submitted the application for the scholarship, right? That looks a little fishy. You know that they're only got the license because they want to qualify for a scholarship, right? They're not, and so how can they be active in ham radio if they got their license a week before they applied for the scholarship? So that's one of the things we look for. But most of the scholarships, not all, but most of the scholarships require a general class or higher license. And there's also geographical requirements. They can be fairly wide. A lot of them say they must be U.S. citizens. We have a few that don't really matter. And once again, we don't control that. That's controlled by the donor. Another example is must live in the Northwestern Division or be one of the 5 states that comprises the Northwestern Division. It could be as specific as being in Oregon, or it could be as specific as within 25 miles of Portland. Then you're getting really tight, right? Some of these scholarships, by the way, do not get filled because there's no students that meet all the requirements that have applied. We don't drop any of the requirements. If we have students that don't meet the requirements and none of the students meet the requirements, that scholarship does not get given out that particular year. That's a pretty much non-flexible. They can also be major related. I can tell you that a vast majority, amateur radio being a technical hobby, the vast majority of our scholarships are major related, and a lot of them are STEM. So if you've got a STEM student, you're going to be in pretty good shape. If you got a student that's majoring in analytical philosophy, it perhaps might be a little harder for them to get an ARRL scholarship. But not impossible. There are a lot of scholarships still that do not have a major requirement, but we do have a lot that have, at least the ones that I've dealt with. A lot of them are engineering, math, STEM related things. A lot of them, by the way, have a specific minimum GPAs, or they'll say that must be a top tier student, right? You're looking for the cream of the crop. A student that comes in with a 2.0 grade point average probably is not going to wind up with an ARRL scholarship unless there's other extenuating circumstances, or maybe they're a very active ham and in a very tough program at a very tough school, and maybe their GPA is 2.8, but they have a YouTube channel where they teach other amateurs or teach people ham radio, and they very active in the community. So the best thing they can do is keep their GPA up. And I'm going to have some examples of things they can do to win a scholarship in a little bit. A high level of ham radio activity. I know one of the things I'm looking at, if I've got 2 kids that have exactly the same GPA that both meet the requirements, I'm going to look at a couple of things. One of them, I'm going to look at what their level of ham radio activity is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Google search. I'm going to go look up their QRZ page, and if they've got 5,000 on their QRZ page, and they've at least got their picture on there and a description of who they are, that's going to help. That's certainly going to help. If you go on there and they find out they've been licensed for 5 years and they've got 12 on their QRZ counter and no profile, no picture, nothing, well, that tells me they're probably not terribly active, but maybe they're active on VHF, right, UHF, where people maybe aren't using QRZ as much, and you can do a little more research into them and find out just how active they actually are. And so this is one of the things where you got to kind of balance things, and you got to it's something that can be used as a qualifier. But some of the scholarships specifically state they must have a high level and demonstrated high level of amateur radio activity. That's a requirement of the tour. So we've had ones we have not been able to give out because we didn't have any hams that we considered to be qualified for that. And a lot of those have special written documentation requirements supporting ham radioactivity. In other words, a letter from a club officer or from some organization. And there's been several kids that did that said they met everything, but the tour said must provide written documentation. They did not submit the documentation, and therefore they did not win the award. And at least one student last year got a scholarship, but it was not one of the very high dollar ones, simply because he never submitted the supporting documentation that was required. So I mean, once again, it's kind of like the same thing with the kids that turned their application in the last day. A lot of the kids don't read everything, and I'm going to find out how they don't read everything in a little bit. There's at least one scholarship where you've got to have a proven disability, and that also requires written proof provided from a doctor saying, yes, this student has a disability, here's what his challenges are. So, so if there are special requirements that are in a TOR, make sure the students know about it, make sure they understand it, make sure they provide the documentation that's required. Some of them have requirements for a specific institution. For example, must be attending Texas A&M University or planning on attending Texas A&M University. I said this is another really easy one to vet for, because that's going to be a really small pool of candidates that are going to wind up qualifying for that. And this is also very important. All scholarships require that college and/or high school transcripts and other supporting documentation be supplied by the deadline given. And last year, I believe they had a deadline that gave them till February or something like that to do it. This year, maybe David can correct me if I'm wrong, but it has to be submitted with the scholarship applications this year, which is between that November 1st and December 31st deadline. David, can you confirm that?
Yes, December 31st is the last day.
Right. So kids that submit their application and forget to get the documentation together are going to wind up losing out on a scholarship. And that would be a real shame. But, we have to have some way to control this. And, and last year we were Melissa at the development headquarters spent a lot of time trying to chase down kids and chase down documentation. And that was costing her time and was costing the league money to do that, paying her salary. And so we've tightened the screws on that as well, where the kids got to have everything in by the deadline date. If they don't, you're done, right? You're gonna have to figure out another way to get your money. Here's some examples of a terms of reference. This is for the Wilse Morgan. This is in our Northwestern division up here in the Northwest. This is the Wilse Morgan WX7P Northwestern Division Memorial Scholarship. It's a single $2,000 yearly award that must be given to a student who resides in the ARRL Northwestern Division, right? That's the states of Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. So they got to live in one of those 5 states. Is pursuing a STEM curriculum major, science, technology, engineering, or a math degree. So it's got to have. And by the way, business or finance is not considered a STEM class. Neither are fine arts. The reason that business or finance doesn't is they don't have high enough math requirements for those majors to be considered a part of a STEM program. Has a cumulative GPA or 3.0 or above. Be an active radio amateur and show proof of this activity. This is one where they have to provide proof of how they did it. Now the proof could be, I've got a QRZ page that shows what I do. I've got 15,000 hits on my QRZ page. That's a pretty good indication they're an active ham, right? Or a letter from a club officer of a local club that they are, or it could be from a Boy Scout troop where he's been teaching amateur radio merit badges. And so many kids have graduated with that badge. I mean, it's showing that he's an Elmer and a mentor to other students. So basically, just to show that they're active, and hold at least a general class license. And by the way, because this one's fairly tight, especially with the fact that you have to be in the Northwestern Division and a STEM major, this one's one of the easier ones to award. I don't need to spend hours to do this one. And out of the 177 students, there might be 10. Or maybe even 8 or 7 that qualify for this award. So for me, this is one of the easier ones to vet. There's 2 different types of foundation scholarship funding. One of them, as I mentioned, is temporarily restricted. The other one are what's considered a permanently restricted scholarship. And in a temporary one, basically it's when somebody dies and they for example, give the foundation, for example, $100,000 and say, here, put this towards scholarships, right? This is a temporarily restricted fund. And basically we provide scholarships until the money's gone, per a terms of reference document that's given to us by the executors of the estate, or maybe pre-done by the silent key ham or whatever, or if they don't necessarily be a silent key, but a lot of times these are money that's willed to the foundation. If there's insufficient money available, for example, I start running out of money, no scholarship will be awarded until more monies are added. We have several scholarships that are funded every year, and they'll say it's $1,000 scholarship. They'll give us $1,000 every year to fund those. Sometimes Melissa has to chase down those people. Sometimes she doesn't. Hopefully she doesn't. But some people become, the executors take care of it. They give us the money, and everybody disappears after that. And or somebody who donated money to the league is still alive and then becomes a silent key, and the family doesn't know who we are. We have no way to contact them. So once it runs out of money, the scholarship gets closed out, and any remaining funds will be transferred to the foundation general fund. And that's generally, if say it's $1,000 scholarship, we might, if it gets down to $600, we might do a single $500 scholarship the last year. And then the remaining $100, we can't find anybody to that can tell us what to do with the money. It winds up getting rolled into our foundation general fund that helps fund some of the ARRL Foundation scholarships. The minimum amount to establish a temporary restricted scholarship is $1,000, and we do charge a 1.5% fee in addition to that to cover our administration cost of dealing with the scholarship. An example: a donor might give an amount, say $10,500, and wants the award to be $1,000 over the next 10 years. I want you to have a $1,000 scholarship in the next 10 years, and I'll use up my $10,000. So there are 10 scholarships awarded unless the donators, and sometimes they give us more money, comes into more money or whatever, or has more money, and well, I want to add to what I've got in the pot, and we the foundation keeps track of all that. Once the money's run out, it's closed out unless more money is forthcoming. Now, on a permanently restricted one, that's a little bit different, and these are what are called perpetual scholarships. The scholarships are funded only by the interest generated from the amount of the money, and so we have a scholarship that basically eats up the interest only. So the main part of the money, the corpus part of it, stays intact. An example: the scholarship is funded for amounts that call it $100,000. The corpus of these funds remain in the named scholarship funds in the books of record. These funds are never awarded, so we never really dip into the $100,000. That $100,000 is permanently carried on the foundation book. That's why we got $7 million in the bank, and most of those, by the way, are in these permanently restricted funds. I don't know what the ratio is. David may know that, but I don't have that off the top of my head. Interest earnings are used for scholarships and foundation expenses. If earnings are not enough to fund the scholarship amount, no scholarship will be awarded in the particular year. In other words, we never dip into those funds. We wait for the interest to accumulate until there's enough interest to handle another scholarship. That's, of course, unless the donor wants to change his terms of reference. But that's what a permanently restricted scholarship is. So the different types of scholarships you can have, right? Where can the money come from, or what kind of people can generate those? Well, you can have individual scholarships. For example, the Chick Allen NW3Y scholarship is an example of one that just an individual gave us some money and said, here, please create a scholarship in my name. You can have an in memoriam scholarship. I mentioned that one for the Northwestern division here, the in memory of Wilse Morgan W7XP, the Northwestern division scholarship. That's an in memoriam one submitted by the estate of Wilse Morgan. A club scholarship, the Gwinnett Amateur Radio Society scholarship. That's one that's sponsored every year by a ham radio club. A group scholarship, you can have multiple clubs join together, or clubs plus organizations, or clubs plus people join together and create a group scholarship. And of course, a corporate scholarship. And the one big one that we are involved with right now is the generous monies from the Amateur Radio Digital Communications, or ARDC, and that's an example of a corporate scholarship. And this varies year to year. It's not an endowed. It's basically they have been funding us on a year-to-year basis. And by the way, any of these above examples can either be a permanently restricted or temporarily restricted scholarship. So it's all up to the donor. We don't control any of that. They tell us what to do with the money. The vetting process. Let's look into what the real work of vetting for these scholarships is. Every committee member is assigned a list of scholarships to review, and that's generally between 10 and 15 scholarships. The member reviews the candidates who they select, or excuse me, they review the candidates they're given to figure out and see if they can match those up to the scholarships. Probably a better way to put that. The member reviews the terms of reference for the scholarship and determines which candidates meet the TOR requirements. And for me, I do it by doing data sorts in Excel, and that works very well for that. In the future, we'll be using this external cloud-based software to essentially do that. For higher value scholarships, we've in this last year for the larger, the ones that were $10,000 and above, we actually did personal interviews with each of the candidates via Zoom. You find out a lot about kids from talking to them in person. You can find out if really they say that they're really active in ham radio. You look up QRZ and they're not so active, or doesn't appear to be, but yet you talk to them in person and you find out exactly what they do. Or just the opposite. They'll seem like they're really active. They have to do a written thing on the application of what their ham radio activities are. Boy, you sound like they're a honor roll participant. And then you find out, well, no, what they really do is they check into a net once a month when you actually talk to them in person. So we do learn a lot from these personal interviews. There's usually a team of 2 or 3 committee members, so it is kind of hard to get everybody together at one time. And so this is pretty time consuming. It did add a lot to our work this year. The results are posted to an Excel spreadsheet that our committee chair puts together, which is then sent to each committee member. And then what we do is each member determines a first, second, and usually a third choice for each scholarship. And the reason we do that is we like to award the high dollar scholarships first. And what typically happens is I'll get mine done first, and say somebody else waits a week to get theirs done. And I pick somebody that I think should win a $1,000 scholarship, and they have one that, no, I think they have the same candidate that's qualified for their scholarship, but it's a $2,000 scholarship. Well, their scholarship, the guy that is applied gets the $2,000 one, not the $1,000 one. So I've got to come up with another candidate to meet that meets that. So I always come up with 2 or 3 candidates for every single scholarship, and I rank them 1, 2, and 3. And if I can't give my number 1, I go to my number 2. Sometimes I've had to go down as far as number 6 in order, because the top 5 got taken by other people for higher value scholarships. So it is, there is a lot of work involved, and it's a lot of moving things around. And then the entire committee reviews the list of recommendations, and we always start by trying to vet for the $25,000 scholarships first, and then work our way down. And then we always discuss this as a team. Poor Jim Fenstermaker, our scholarship chair, he's the one that really has to put all this together in conjunction with Melissa at ARRL headquarters. When we're all done and got everything done, we submit our final list to the ARRL Foundation board. And then once that's taken care of, the list goes to the ARRL development team that then notifies the recipients. And finally, they cut the checks and send that to the recipient's college. I mentioned we don't pay the students directly. The money goes to the college or university that they've selected for future distribution. Sometimes that's a month. Sometimes it could be as far as a year away, but typically it's within a few months. So how can you win an ARRL scholarship? Well, number 1 is you must have an amateur radio license. If you don't have a ham radio license, we've had people that have applied for them with funny looking call signs that you find out they're fake. Right? It doesn't have the appearance of or one guy submitted last year and used like, WKRP was his call sign. Well, no, that's not going to work. Please, and this happens all the time, please read and understand the TOR document, and do not apply scholarships you don't qualify for. Some kids just go in and they'll apply for every single scholarship. And that consumes a lot of our time. It consumes a lot of everybody's time, because we have to go through and and so you wind up with way more kids, and by the time you find out how many kids actually that applied for it actually met the tour, it's usually around half, and the other half should have never applied for it had they read the documentation. It really helps to be an ARRL member, right? The student rate is $26 a year. And now for kids under 18 here, as soon as they start charging for FCC application fees, that'll be covered mostly by the ARRL. So if the kid is not an ARRL member, please, donate them a ARRL membership, right? Because that a lot of times too, not only ham radioactivity, but being that these are sponsored by or controlled by the ARRL, organization, we have a tendency to like kids that are ARRL members and show they support the ARRL. And by the way, some of the terms of reference documents do require ARRL membership. So automatically, any kid that's not an ARRL member does not qualify. And get on the air and show activity. Be radioactive, right? I mentioned the worst thing I want to see is a ham that's got a technician class license that got their license a week before they qualified for or applied for a scholarship. They're going to wind up kind of getting shuffled to the bottom. And, so if you get the kids licensed, get them active, get them on the air a few years before they apply for a scholarship. You need to do that anyway, right? That's all part of being an amateur radio mentor. Join local and national radio clubs, right? We have several kids last year that were members of multiple clubs, and several even at the university that they were at or high school founded their own club, right? They started a ham radio club at their high school. Same thing we did back when we were kids, right? Or even at university. One of the students last year founded a new radio club at the University of Oregon. That's what you call being radioactive, not only being on the air, but actually being organizing and getting other people involved. So that really goes a long way. Excel in your studies, right? Just about any of the, especially the larger dollar skips, all require at least a 3.0 GPA. And if you're going to get one of the big high dollar scholarships, the ones that were 25,000, we have many kids that have above a 4.0 grade point average. You say, well, how is that possible? Well, sometimes when kids are in high school, they're taking college level classes and they'll give them an A, might be worth 4.2 points or 4.3 points. And so the kid can actually wind up with not only 4.0 grade point average, but because they were taking college classes in high school, they're worth more. And you can have a kid with a 4.4, a 4.5 grade point average out of a score of 4. Now, some high schools have a 5.0 grade point average as being the high end at some percentage of that. So we have to recalculate that and make everything based on a 4.0 equivalency. But even doing that, we still have some kids that have above a 4.0 grade point average. And by the way, when you're in competition, that certainly helps you in vetting for an ARRL scholarship. It's good for kids to have other activities. We had kids that were ballerinas, that played piano, that did woodworking, and were very good at it. Artists, we had several artists that were very good art. One of our students applying for a scholarship last year specialized in doing ham radio related cartoons. I mean, there's somebody that's kind of radioactive, involved in the hobby, and an artist, and she was really kind of fun to interview. Don't major in ham radio. We've had a few people that are very active in ham radio, but not such great students, and it's because they spend a lot of time on doing amateur radio stuff and not so much time as students. And there may be some people on the call here that are that way when they're growing up, but don't major in ham radio, but a minor is okay, right? You want to be active, but these kids have to make sure that they keep their nose in the books sufficiently to keep that grade point average up. And it's great to find mentors, right? Mentors will really help kids to gain the knowledge they need in the radio side that they need in order to qualify and win an ARRL scholarship. So that's all I have for the presentation. I'm going to do stop share, and then I'll take any questions. Or David, if you've got any more comments of anything I might have missed.
No, you did a great job. I might add that Mike is really one of the most productive members of the scholarship team, and that is a very, very difficult job. He mentioned that our 500 hours is actually closer to 800 hours. It just takes a lot of time because, it's other people's money, number one. You want to do the right thing for it. And believe it or not, it's hard to give away money, especially if you're conscientious. And we try to do that, make certain that the right kid gets his share or her share. And I think last year we were fortunate. I think we did a really good job last year. Of course, Mike is a big contributor. Thank you, Mike.
Well, thank you, David. Okay, are there any questions I can answer for anybody on that's on the on here tonight? You guys still awake?
Yeah, we're all awake. Thanks, Mike. I didn't see any hands go up here, and there's not much in chat. I'll double check. Barry, what's going on in chat?
Nothing in chat.
That's what I was seeing here. Well, it was a good presentation. I am surprised at the lower number that showed up. However, we'll get this out to be on YouTube and a dozen other deals. So they get lots of attention that way.
We got one raised hand.
Okay, let's take it away, Larry. Larry?
Yeah, me and the button had a misunderstanding. Anyhow, I was just wondering, is there any, other than, well, I'd like to steer some educators your way for the, like our STEM programs here. Can they find that information on the ARRL website, or is there any place else where maybe they can get literature or something?
Well, it's on the ARRL website under the ARRL Foundation, and do a search for grants. And there's a whole information there about how to apply for the grant program. If you have trouble finding that, get in contact with me, and I'll send you the link of where that is.
Barry's pretty good about that. He'll get that in chat here in a little bit. Anybody else?
I see Diana. It looks like Diana's got her hands and
She
got
sure
her hand
does.
raised. There she is.
Look at
Welcome.
that. Diana, go ahead.
Thank you, Mike. That was a really great presentation. I feel really comfortable now in being able to recommend for people to, apply, and I feel like I know what I'm doing. So thank you very, very much. And by knowing that, I hopefully will make your jobs, streamline your jobs, and make it as easy as possible. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you. Yeah, one of the problems that David and I have, and the foundation has, is trying to get the word out there. And that's one of the reasons I'm here tonight, is to get the word out there about the ARRL Foundation, because the ARRL itself, I don't think, does enough a good enough job at promoting the foundation. And I think David would agree on that. And one of the things that I think I've got to do more is maybe pound on David to give us a little bit more. They are giving us some more space, I understand, in QST magazine, and some more publicity to get more of the ARRL Foundation information out there. But and it's really buried on the ARRL website. You really got to look hard to find it. And I think our job in the foundation is to try to work. I'm a product marketer is my background. I was a director of product marketing for a telecom company for quite a number of years. So I got marketing to my blood in a way. And I think we need to do a lot better job of marketing the ARRL Foundation. Of course, that also gives us more work. I know. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? I still got to be a director for the ARRL and manage my division. But like I say, for a couple of months in the spring, I am very much occupied with trying to get the stuff done for the foundation. So anyway, thank you, Diana.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mike, and thank you. Let's see. I want to use a proper title. The president, Dr. Bullweaver. Thank you. I don't see everybody up on my Zoom. So thank you both for being here. I need to pop off. I've got a statewide Aries Skywar net that I'm on every week. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Hey, Mike, what is the name of the Amateur Radio something foundation that's sending out grants? What's that name? I don't remember it.
Oh, the Amateur Radio Digital Communications, ARDC.
Okay, thank you. There was a question in the chat about that.
Yeah, just look up ARDC up on Amateur Radio Digital Communications on online. You can find out everything you want to know about them. They're a very large organization, fairly new, but very large. Any more questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
No, I just said, yeah, any more questions?
Well, at least you guys know, a little bit more about the foundation than you did, and you know that also that that if you do have some kids or know some high school kids or run into some high school kids in a couple of years that are going to be of that age and want to go to college, and like I said, $25,000 is nothing to sneeze at. There are some, a lot of lower dollar scholarships. And by the way, many of the scholarships this year, not many, but maybe a handful or maybe a handful and a half, did not get awarded because there were no kids that submitted applications that qualified for them. So they went wanting because not enough kids applied. Oscar, you got a question? Got to unmute.
Thank you, Mike and Dr. David, for the great presentation. I do have a comment, and I lost communication. I don't know if you already answered this question. Do you have an electronic brochure of the scholarship itself and the foundation, and a link to it that describe it that it could be a PDF and send it to the schools that they have radio clubs, to the counselor? Because in every school, there's a counselor that helps the student, guide them for scholarship and universities. And this is a way to attract more students. And it should be, as you mentioned, it should be on the not senior student. They have to be a couple years ahead of time to be prepared, so they can work there for participating on the scholarship. But they need to know. I mean, if you talk to the audience here, we are not in the school. But if you talk to the actual counselors of these schools, they will talk with the actual students. So this is something that I would recommend you to do if you haven't done it. I've probably done it already.
Yeah, David, you want to comment on that?
Well, Oscar, that's really an excellent suggestion. And in the past, we really haven't had the money to do things like that, because you'd have to prepare a brochure, you'd have to have it printed, then you'd have to locate the schools that had clubs or universities that had clubs, and that takes personnel time, and mail it and follow through and answer questions. Of course, you'd have to have a person to do that as well. So we really haven't had the money to do that because we're kind of a pass-through organization. Money comes in one end, but it goes right out the other end. We put it in the hands of the students. But now we actually have a little more money in our pocket, and I like that idea. Let's we'll think about trying to put that together. In the meantime, you can locate all of our information on the ARRL website, as Mike pointed out. Just log on to the website in the upper right-hand corner, do a search for foundation, and it takes you to the foundation page. And actually, all of that information is there. But I like your idea, Oscar. Thanks.
Again, I'm going to stress the idea is having to minimize the cost. It's having a small electronic brochure to send it to the counselors. And also that brochure with the QRC code, it can go exactly to your website and application, things like that. But that PR, that promotion have to be be reached to the student themselves. So through the counselor of the schools, that will be your main goal.
Okay, that was a good suggestion, Oscar.
Yeah, I like it. And maybe, David, maybe we can talk to Melissa if she has the ability to put something like that together and load it up on the website in a PDF format, and then kids can download it as they need it.
No, and I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
When you get that done, you might send me a copy of that PDF, and I'll put it in with the documentation of this presentation, so that as they go down and they look at this presentation, I have a link to the written related documentation. That might be helpful to them too. Okay, I thought I saw another hand up, but if I did, it went away.
Let me look on the chat.
Okay, how we doing in chat there, Barry?
We're good. Everything is covered. Someone did have their hand up, but I don't see where they went away.
They got bashful.
No, that was me, and I was say, put it digital so we could download it and spread it out, but you covered that already. So
okay, super.
Because that'd be really helpful, especially I have connections to some education possibilities that you may not be aware of, and be easier for us to distribute it on the ground than you chasing around trying to find candidates. We could do a lot of your footwork for you.
It could be
Yes.
youth coordinators or it could be club coordinators of every section and utilize those people in their free time to get in contact with schools.
Oh yeah, I'm retired, so plus I have a couple of educators in my ARRL groups that I can tap and beat up.
And you want a QR code on it so the kids can scan it with their phones and go directly to the website.
Oh, boy. We're
getting
doing good
technical.
work.
Sorry,
Then
Mike, I was,
Then you got to get them to submit their applications on time with all the appropriate documentation. That's the next part of the equation, right?
Yeah, but if you get the ideas seated, they'll come along. I mean, it all
Yeah,
depends on the I mean, you can sit there, the old adage about taking the horse to the hay and it ends up drinking the water. So
Yeah, maybe that's something that we can work with, and also then work with Mike Walters, the new head of field services. By the way, David, a lot of the people on here this call tonight are section managers from across the country. So, I mean, they have their youth coordinators that they work with in the schools that deal with the schools, and of course the club coordinators also. So, I mean, the outreach here is larger than one might think.
actually, it's a win-win situation because the youth coordinator have to have something to give to the school and to give to the kids. And this is a good leverage. They have to compete, they have to get into the award, but they have something to trade in. So this is a question of organizing the structure that is already there.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, any more questions or any more comments before I gotta jump off here pretty soon. Getting late on the East Coast. I want to thank Dan again for an opportunity to come. I think it's like probably the fourth or fifth time that I've talked to your group. It seems like you got to find more people, Dan.
Well, you're the information man.
Anyway, we will. If you've got no more questions, I'm going to jump off here, and I want to thank everybody for the opportunity again to present to the RACPAC. Dan, you do a great job of your education program. I think is very top notch here, and I certainly appreciate it. I was working with another group last night, and there was a discussion on there about I wonder what's on the RACPAC tomorrow. You got to tune in and find out. Well, I was giving them a presentation. It was an entirely different presentation than what I'm doing tonight. And they said, oh, that's why I'll tune in. Tell me I'll tune into you tomorrow night too. So anyway,
we're always trying, of course, everybody knows we have a committee and they work really hard. We meet once a week to go over our notes and such and span it out. But we're always, it's not the same as it started out. Today, it'll be different tomorrow. We're always trying to fine tune it, make it better. So if you've got any suggestions, please let us know. That's what we like doing, is what we're doing.
Well, you guys are doing a great job, I think, at least. So anyway, I'm going to say 7-3. There's no more questions, and we'll see you guys next time. If anybody's going to be, it's from California, I'm going to be at PacificCon in a couple of weeks. I'll be in the ARRL booth there. Down in San Ramon, California, and stop by and say hi.
Stay safe, Mike. Stay
All right,
safe.
thank you. Talk to you guys later. And good night, and thank you very much for coming tonight, Dr. Woolweaver. I certainly appreciate your help and being here tonight.
No, a privilege, Mike. Always a privilege.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night. 73s.
Night all. Stay safe.